Welcome back. Dan and Anthony here again with episode 16 this time of the Pregame Network podcast. It's been a little bit, but we're back in the saddle again. I'm excited to be here. How are you, my friend?
I am doing just fine, buddy.
I don't think that answer will ever change.
There's I think like I always say, I'm actually gonna say it early because normally I try to end it with this and sometimes I forget. Things are looking up. I think we have some rocky stuff ahead of us, but I think in the long run everything's gonna be golden.
This brings me joy.
Yeah, but hold on to that joy because the last thing I'm gonna hit is gonna be a bit of a doozy. But
Okay.
but things are good. I'm a little winded, probably not as winded as you are, but I've been working on some stuff on the side for future projects, and it's taken a bit out of me. But otherwise,
Already
I'm me. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, just for us to get right into it, I'll go over what I've been playing recently, and then I'll give you the stage since my game time has been very limited as of late.
That's fair.
But so we've been kind of getting back into the First Descendant again.
Yes.
So we've been doing that a little bit. We're trying to get you through the story right now, but I don't have any overtly negative things to say about it, which is definitely a good thing. I want to know what the end game is like, but I haven't even beaten the main story yet. So we'll see how that goes once I get there. But the other game that I've kind of been sinking my teeth into lately is Mad Max.
I noticed.
Yeah. When did this come out? 2016, I think. Long time ago. Yeah. So I bought that on for like $3, and Avalanche 100% peaked with Mad Max. It's still a lot of fun. Like, even nothing is really like, they didn't build anything that is antiquated by today's standards. Like, what was it, 8 years ago at this point?
It came out 2016, so yeah, 8 years.
Yeah. I think coming back to it for the second time, the audio design for the cars especially, so good. You know how much I like my muscle cars, and like the audio design for your like V8s are just fucking perfect. It's so much fun to like hop into your car and hear your engine roar. But yeah, so that's really all I've been doing is First Descendant, and I jumped back into Mad Max. It's one of like the last like really open world games that I got into, and it's just as good as what I remember. So two thumbs up from this guy.
Yeah,
Mad
Max. Yeah, Mad Max is one of the last really good quality licensed attempts, and it's also like that traditional open world, the non-Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Ubisoft open world. There's not a lot of that around. That's one of the. I think the only one that came out around and after that is probably Days Gone. That's like the only one I can think of.
Yes, which I did buy that as well, but I never actually ended up. It's one of those games that like I bought it on sale and it ended up in my backlog, and I will eventually have to go back to it. But I think the thing that really helped Mad Max as far as like it not feeling like every other fucking open world is that all the mechanics are basically built around your car. Like it's. There are outposts that you have to go in and clear on foot, and it's basically a clone of the Arkham combat system, which is fine because it wasn't like it's not like they did it a disservice or anything like that, but it was the best thing that could have fit into the formula that they created for this game. But everything else has to do with your car, like races, taking down different structures in the map. That like you can either do it on foot, but it's way easier to do it in your car. It's just it's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mad Max, great game. Anyone listening out there, you should definitely go to and buy it and play it. Well, because it's like $20 on Steam.
I know,
but
it's like here's the thing. Like, it's just like I'm fine if they do it, but that's like a buyer's. I'm probably gonna cut that out. Dan mentioned a CD key reselling website, which you're not really supposed to use. I'm not going to smack your hand, but there are risks with that involved. So I'm just.
Okay. I didn't even know that.
Go to where you can find the game the cheapest and do so guilt-free. Yes. We're not going to hold it against you.
That is a much better way of phrasing that sentiment.
That's the friendly way to say it, I guess.
Yeah.
So with me, I've been, I say this every week. I've been playing fighting games. I always do. I've been playing Street Fighter, Tekken. Me and Harrison actually just went through we made a huge list. We're moving into August. Every weekend we're going to be trying like 10 different fighters that we've played before and some new ones, because we're trying to make like a consistent list going forward so that we know what we like playing and what we can really focus on. So there's going to be even more of that later. What I also put is because I let Game Pass lapse, not because I wasn't getting games off it. Obviously, I've mentioned how many games I've mentioned where I'm just like, oh, I'm playing this, I picked this up, I still got to go back and beat some of those. And when that happened, I'm just like, I won't renew it right away. What do I have that I owned? And I went in and I picked up Red Faction Guerrilla, the Remastered Edition.
Oh, wow. The remastered.
Yeah. And it's like, I haven't played that game since it launched, the original launched on the Xbox 360. That was a long fucking time ago.
Yeah, I remember playing that game when it first launched.
Oh, man. I think it was before, like, the big, I think, like, the way I time it in my head, and this could be wrong, is the latest Mortal Kombat game was Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. And the reason that sticks out in my head, that puts it way before 2011. So I'm going to say like 2008?
Well, okay, so Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered Edition, I have it in my Steam library. I didn't even know that I did. That released in 2018, at least according to Steam.
No, but I'm talking about like the original. This is the first time I played the remastered version. I'm talking about the original. 2009. That's what this says.
Jesus.
Yeah, so that was a while ago. So I was pretty accurate. I don't know when Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. That's a weird way for me to time it. But anyway, so I picked that up and I've been playing that and I've been enjoying it. I think whenever we talk about like technology that just isn't like touched upon or expanded upon, I feel like that game comes up a lot because like it set a new bar in like destruction. Yeah. Like just where you can like just, I mean, sure, it was a sparse open world with buildings scattered about just because of the setting, and it was kind of like a way to get away with that, but like the destruction is still like
top notch, even by today's standards.
Yeah, I don't like. I feel that is just like they stopped trying there. Not that they should have, but like that's where they stopped trying with that particular technology. The one that came closest to doing that again was Crackdown 3, and by the time that came out, they basically gutted the system out of that. Like back when it was supposed to be powered by the cloud or whatever. I digress. So basically, I'm enjoying Red Faction Guerrilla. I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I'll play it to completion because it is kind of. It relies very heavily on its gameplay, and that's a good thing for a game to do, but I feel like I need just a little bit more. Otherwise, I start eyeing your pacing, and I'm weird like that, so it's whatever. But I'm enjoying it so far, in addition to my fighting games, and that's pretty much what I've been playing lately, anyway.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't even really touched Destiny lately, so...
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, but...
I guess you
but
can
the thing is, like, I'm so busy right now that, like,
yes.
I don't want to dump what little time that I have into something that is not gonna, like, I've definitely gone over this before. Yeah, go ahead.
You can't handle two strenuous workloads. You can only handle one.
This fucking guy.
Yeah, so we'll bench the syrup for a little bit so you can focus on good games and your life.
You know, I've went over this in a previous episode, but like the final shape, it came and went, it wrapped up. I'm very happy with how everything ended. There were like a couple things that I wish they would have done differently, but I won't even get into that right now.
When you have time and you've played a decent amount and collected, that's the kind of topic you should save for like when you want to sit down and talk about it. Not necessarily like I don't want you to. I'm not trying to treat it like you were abused or anything like that. I'm just saying like it's something that you've invested a lot of time into. You're passionate about, so you may as well. You don't want to dissect it all offhand in a conversation with me who's going to glaze over when you talk about the intricacies. You want to sit down and make it the topic. Not intentionally ignore you. You just got to give it the time it deserves.
Well, but we'll get you a couple of espressos to have by your side while I rant about it.
Give me some espressos. We'll do it at like 3 p.m. instead of like midnight. Open the blinds so like I can't escape the sun.
Anyway, so Cool. So that's what you've been playing.
Yeah.
As far as like what to talk about this week, you remember Remnant too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're getting a new DLC.
It's the final, right? The final
It's the
DLC.
final, yeah, DLC number 3. It's called The Dark Horizon. It was announced for uh it's coming in September,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the 1 year anniversary of the game releasing, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either like they announced it on the 1 year anniversary or they are releasing it on the 1 year anniversary. I don't know
Okay.
which one that is, but they're getting another DLC. I'm all about that because you know how much I enjoyed Remnant 2.
Of course.
Uh, and let's see, what does it say here? It's going to be the biggest expansion. So I mean, you hear that all the time.
Go out with a bang.
Uh,
Why not?
yeah, and then there's going to be a new game mode that's going to be free for everybody, and it has a new progression system. So that sounds cool to me.
Okay. That
I
would have
am
been my question. Like,
excited.
if it's the biggest, aside from just additional dungeons and story content, like what
Hmm.
kind of gameplay stuff are you going to see? And then that pretty much answers my question.
Yeah, it's probably going to be, like another world, more weapons, more armor,
Mm-hmm.
a new archetype most likely, and then whatever this other game mode. This game is like itching for some sort of a horde mode. Uh, just based on how it plays, it's just itching for a horde mode. So
Mm-hmm.
I would probably suspect that they are going to be working on something very akin to that, or it's going to be like a roguelike, and and because the game, the way that like the hub and spoke kind of structure is built,
Mm-hmm.
it I could just see them putting in a roguelike mode specifically for the way that this game is made. So
Yeah.
those are my two predictions.
Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
But beyond that, I mean, that's the Remnant. That wasn't like a huge thing. I just wanted to touch
Yeah,
on
of
that
course.
briefly.
Yeah.
Um, uh, oh, so the Helldivers too. They've announced their expansion major update
Yes.
thing.
Yes, I heard about that, and just in
Yeah.
time too, because their player base is dire straits.
Dwindling.
Yeah, just
Is it? Well,
between
hold on a second. I'm gonna look it up.
lowest they've ever
Okay.
been.
Well, yeah, but you could say that for
I
almost
mean,
anything.
I know you can say that for just about anything, but it's what did it dip below? It dipped below a certain threshold for the first time in its lifespan. That's what I remember
Okay,
being a big
that's
deal.
fair, I guess. All
Under
right, so it's
10,000 or
not on
something.
the
I can't
most
remember.
played games right now, but
Uh-huh.
that was kind of to be expected, and it's not under trending games either. Um, Once Human is in like the top 10. That's okay, interesting.
What's that again? What's
Uh,
human?
so it's like a survival game.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Helldivers 2 currently has 24,000 in game.
Okay.
So that is
Let's
definitely lower
see.
than it has been, but that's not nothing.
Dipped. I mean, it's
So like
I
this
don't know. It's
says
dipping. Yeah.
73%
Yeah.
of the 884,000. Oh wait, no. That's just for the review. Never mind.
Hmm.
I can't really tell what the chart isn't really populating here. All right, whatever. But it's
I
24,000
I
people
know
in
it's
game right
been
now.
it's been dipping pretty heavily since May, and it hasn't
Hmm.
really shown any time
The whole like
any amount of stopping.
the whole like war bond once every month wasn't sustainable, and they realized that pretty quick.
It's honestly, to me, from like the outside looking in, it's been taking a pounding on pretty much all fronts. Like, you had the Sony controversy, you have what you and Joe keep talking about, which is like how the game is balanced and the way the content, is just like a drip feed. And then on top of that, you have like the nonsense going on in the community with community managers kind of power tripping and injecting politics and shit like that into it.
Yeah.
It's like it's taking a pounding on all fronts, and it like you got to start easing up on one of them.
Right. I still, and I haven't played it in a while. I think the next time I am going to jump in is probably going to be for this update, which
Yeah.
is on August 6th, I want to say.
Hmm.
So it's pretty soon. So I am looking forward to that. But the all the changes that they went over and the additions that they are going to be adding, they all seem like it's all very welcome changes, but at the end of the day, like my primary concern, not concern, my number one complaint with this game has been like, once you've unlocked everything, like you're just kind of chasing your arbitrary rank, and
Yeah,
I wish there was other things to get.
Yeah, that we've talked about ad nauseum. How there's just like nothing at the top. But,
yeah.
Hopefully, this new update stems some of the bleeding. I mean, like, I've had no complaints about the game when I did manage to play it. I thought it was fun. It was really hampered by my hardware. Everybody I know that's played it comes away with one of two opinions: either it's really, really fun, or it was really, really fun until I hit the top and the balancing took a nosedive.
So that's pretty much the big problem, because it will be very fun until you hit the top, and then it's still fun, but then you get bored because there's no carrot to chase.
Yeah, so it's not too much to say. Again, like for me, I don't have too much to retread on that, just because whenever we talk about Helldivers, we immediately hit that, like, well, it needs to do this, this, and this, but now it needs to do this, this, and this, and also the player count is only going downward, you know?
Yeah, I have faith. I think I think this update will be good, so we'll see. Time will tell.
Yes, time will tell.
All right, so hit me with something new. What did I miss this week?
So did you hear? This is. I mean, I'm not.
Is it something Suicide Squad related?
No, actually, it's eSports was officially cleared for Olympic.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It was a unanimous vote too.
Wow.
I'm no word yet on exactly what's going to be there. I do believe the one caveat was that no like hyper-violent or shooting games will be applicable, so no Call of Duty. Everybody kind of...
What are they going to put in? Because like FPSs are like the main draw for... Well, no, there's the MOBAs and...
Yeah, so basically, like, there's no official word outside of what isn't allowed, but, you know, so you can rule out things like Counter-Strike isn't going to be there, Call of Duty isn't going to be there, Hero Shooter of the Now isn't going to be there. I would wager possibly League of Legends. If RTSs were still popular, I would say like maybe an Age of Empires or a StarCraft.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I have a feeling at least one fighting game is going to squeak in, maybe Street Fighter, maybe Tekken. No other game really has the clout to make it that big, and Mortal Kombat is too violent. I'm sure there will be racing and sports games there. Although I imagine sports games will probably cause some friction with like the actual athletes, so we'll see how that goes. I'll be honest, like you said, it's pretty cool. I think it's nice that they're getting recognition. I'm very iffy on esports. Games being recognized as something that people compete in, fine by me, but like that esports culture, I don't need it. Like it's already one kind of like rotten institution. I don't need it near an institution like the Olympics, which is already having its own problems with current cultural things.
God,
you know? Like, yeah, you heard all that. Like, we're not going to get into that. This is not the place for that.
I don't want
to. But it's just like, I don't know. Like, I'm always iffy because like the earnest nature of people playing these games, enjoying them, and competing at a high level shouldn't be diminished, because one way or the other, even though it's not necessarily a great physical achievement, there is at its core, hopefully, an earnestness in how people play these games. But by the time these kind of connections are made, I'm always iffy about like who's making the call, who's going to be representing, what's the catch, and who you're elevating to that pedestal of Olympic Games, you know? So we'll see what happens. I'm sure in the coming months we'll hear more about like what games are being pushed forward as, you know, potentially being on the main stage for these Olympic Games, you know? So we'll see.
So speaking of games, can we talk about Concord a little bit?
The only thing I've heard recently is that nobody's pre-ordering or wishlisting this shit.
So they had their closed beta, right? And it was only for people who pre-ordered the game. But if you did pre-order it, not only did you get into the beta, but you got 5 keys to give to your friends so that they can get into the beta. And those numbers were like, I don't know, 1,200 people in total for the closed beta weekend. And then they had their open beta. Anybody could hop in. I don't think it squeaked past 5,000.
It did not.
Like,
the numbers are really, really bad.
And like Sony bought this studio after seeing this game like one time or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I said it before, like the combat actually looks pretty good. but everything else is like creatively bankrupt. It's like what AI would design if it was told to make a hero
that's
shooter.
pretty much what we said when we were when the beta was active and we were talking about the game itself last week or whenever we last recorded. Like we had that same
oh yeah, we about this like at length last time.
Yeah, we've talked about Concord a few times just because each step of the way it's like, oh, it's announced. It doesn't really look all that interesting, and then it's like, oh, we're seeing more gameplay, and you're saying, oh, it kind of looks fun to play, and I kind of disagree, not with you, but like with my takeaway from the game, and then we just go, oh, well, it's nobody's really receiving this, and it's
yeah. It does look fun to play, but like, just I don't think we need another fucking hero shooter.
We don't. And, it's the same thing I said about Frag Punk and all that. That's not much more to say. We don't need more hero shooters, at least in this awful way where they're not really doing anything different. Like, Valorant stuck around because it has, like, that design factor that people are attracted to, and the fact that it's, like, a hero shooter mixed with Counter-Strike. So it has that draw there, but, like, people just making hero shooters with, like, flimsy gimmicks or, like, no gimmicks, it's not drawing people, and I don't blame it on the players. I blame it on the people making these decisions. Like you said, like you mentioned that Sony saw this game and then there's just, oh, we gotta have this, and the studio. That is such like a sign of who's making the shots, who's making the calls. Everybody always talks about shareholders and corporate suits just don't know what they're talking about or what they're looking at, or they're behind on the trends, and it does not surprise me if that's the case, that like some upper management guy or somebody at Sony saw this and said, we've got to have it,
It's funny because that's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So,
it won't surprise me.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. So what else you got?
I heard recently there was I forget exactly what happened. There was some kind of filing or briefing that Take-Two was part of. The parent of Rockstar Games. You obviously know who they are. And they were talking about review bombing. And for the longest time, when it comes to movements like this, right? Everybody, it's always like all the fanboys and the corporate bootlickers, they always say like, oh, your review doesn't matter, your voice doesn't matter, even if you vote with your wallet, it doesn't matter. But apparently, according to I forget who exactly, but people were talking about it at this filing, and the leadership said that review bombing actually has a noticeable negative effect. Significant, I think really? They even said like it hurts their ratings, it hurts their sales to a certain degree. So that's a good thing, in my opinion, that there's some kind of consumer leverage on because like sometimes I say this all the time, I'm gonna keep wording it this way, we talk about it all the time, how it's just the consumer just like is forced to deal with so much, and some of the consumers buy in and will attack other consumers, but it's nice to know that there is some kind of leverage that we have, even even if it's just a bunch of people getting together and saying, screw this game. If that's what it takes, that you got to put the pressure on somehow.
We deal with such large numbers, like as far as the amount of people that will buy and consume and play a game, to like, even if something is objectively bad or it's like predatory, it could still move a fuck ton of units and make a ridiculous amount of money. So. Yeah. Because of that, there are not a whole lot of options. Like if something is legitimately predatory or it's a bad product or whatever, there is in fact very little recourse aside from review bombing or I don't even know what else. I think that's probably the most
it's the
maybe
quickest
effective.
It's the quickest and easiest of all the options. Like boycotts have steadily been getting more stream, have been picking up steam, so that is getting to the point where like you could feasibly get some boycotts done for the right cause if you attract the right people. Groups that keep track of anti-consumer practices are picking up steam to the point where you have developers and interest groups speaking out and talking about how, oh, all these people are evil and causing a stink over nothing, so they're scared in that regard. I'll tell you what doesn't work, and I've been hearing this from more than a few outlets. Like certain developers talk about this on Twitter. Certain meetings come out and they mention this, but like online like messaging, write-ins, mail. Apparently, a lot of that, aside from the fact that like people who want to protect these practices will probably just like find a way to get rid of the mail. A lot of it,
right.
like they treat it like spam. You know, and to a degree, I get it. Even though that is pretty anti-consumer to take like if I take the time to write to you, you can at least like look at it. I'm not going to expect you to turn things around if I'm the one guy saying it, but you can at least look at it. But apparently, like online petitions and online letters are like, first of all, they're worth less than like writing a physical letter and getting it to the address, which is worth something, but it's treated like spam by a lot of these companies. Unless it's like raw review data or like surveys they put out, you know? So,
yeah.
So, I mean, other than that, it's like one-off special cases like the shit that's going on with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like, I don't know if you saw what's going on, but like Ubisoft, after all this pressure, they finally caved and said, we apologize. And even though they're still doing shitty stuff and still making the shitty game, they're no longer asserting everything they're doing is fact. They're no longer propping up, you know, bullshit historians saying like, look at all the nice things we're doing. You know, it's they've pulled back on their authenticity claims. So there's certain situations like that, you know, but it's really hard, and it's really it's about putting up pressure that seems hopeless for so long until you finally break through. And the nice thing is, once you get that momentum going, it's very easy to rally to multiple causes as long as you as long as you're persistent, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that is the whole review bombing thing. I think it's like a tool for the community at large. Not always the right thing, but
it's one
something.
of the few options, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've been so out of the loop lately. You're gonna have to steer this one for a second.
Xbox is starting to slowly push out their Activision properties onto Game Pass.
Oh, that's cool. Modern Warfare 3 came to Game Pass.
Yeah,
that was a big one.
Modern Warfare 3 is on there. There's rumors that another Call of Duty might be coming down the line. The Crash Bandicoot games might be coming on there.
It is such a slam dunk to just put all of it on fucking Game Pass. Like, I don't understand.
It makes a lot of sense, but I think they were waiting. One, they needed to get some distance between them and the filing. Because after they raised the price, all the commissions, all the committees involved started writing in saying like, "Hey, this is exactly what we were trying to avoid when we were throwing up these regulations." You know, so they're already coming under fire. So they didn't need Sony right away. You know, trying to wedge their way in and threaten certain things and like play legalese or whatever to say like, hey, you know, they made one action in this direction, which means that they were lying during the briefing or whatever, you know. And I think the other thing is like they wanted to play it as smart as possible to make the most money possible, because like now you own these properties in one way, shape or form. You're getting more money for these purchases on your platform,
right?
Which probably explains why they played it conservative. What was the first Activision Blizzard game that was on there? Was it Diablo 4? Was that the first major one that came to Game Pass?
I think it was the first major one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the first major one, and then the next one was the announcement of Black Ops 6, and then Modern Warfare 3, and now there's rumors of the Crash games, and I have a feeling that over the course of the next year and a half to 2 years, if this momentum keeps, we'll probably see most, if not all, the games on there, with the exception of Call of Duty. They will take the longest with that, short of some kind of back into a corner thing. Like I kept stressing with that event, the Xbox event, I'm like, they're going to say it, they're going to do it. It would make perfect sense for them to do it. If they're going to do it, this is how they got to do it. So that's an ace in the hole that they're willing to dole out slowly or not dole out at all if they can avoid it, you know?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's such like a untapped well of goodwill, I would say. Especially with like the people who grew up playing COD like us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say about it. It's like I said before, it seems like such a slam dunk, and I'm just like, I'm still waiting. Please, please. So, anywho,
I mean, if you've got nothing else and I've got nothing else, all I've got is the big thing I want to kind of talk about. It's gonna be
yeah.
it's gonna be a rant. Dan.
Oh wait, hold on a second. Didn't Rocksteady bring back the Justice League from Suicide Squad? But I
Did they?
could have sworn I heard something about this. They brought them all back from the dead or something, and then you showed me what Mr. Freeze looks like.
So I showed you that. I think they brought the Flash back. So here's the thing. I talked to you a while ago about Suicide Squad and how like a bunch of things leaked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard rumored is that the Justice League, it was planned to be revealed that the Justice League would come back in one way, shape, or form, right? And I think this Mrs. Freeze update is
it actually
is when they started pushing it. Yeah, I know it's hard to tell when you see that image. But Dan, you fucking bigot, you! If the skin that I showed you, that colorful skin, you can see the lesbian symbol on there. She's very clearly a woman.
Oh, right? Really?
Yes. So
wait, this was in. Continue. I'm just gonna find the picture.
But yeah. So basically, I think in this update, they teased that whole thing.
That looks terrible.
I know it looks terrible. Close it. Don't burn your eyes. But I believe what happened is the Flash, in some way, shape, or form, is alive in this new update. I haven't kept up with it. I've been meaning to go back and watch the cutscenes. I'm still not playing it unless it's completely free in some way. But yeah, so
pretty sure they're about to shut the game down unless they're contractually obligated to keep it up for like a year.
They went from weekly updates to monthly updates at a certain point. So like it's like I always say about Call of Duty. It's like the guillotine is visible. Just a matter of when. So
just swinging like a pendulum from
It would be something else if like they're obviously not going to be able to pull off every season they intended because they had a lot of seasons planned. But I hope at minimum they're able to close out the story, right? If only for the fact that like the cutscenes are semi-entertaining to watch if you ignore all the shitty writing, and the fact that I really, really don't need 5 years from now saying the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was actually a good game that we never gave a chance, and the fact that it's never finished is a tragedy, because for sure we're gonna get that one way or the other in the future, but I really don't need it to be if the game is canceled without finishing its story, So that's where they're at. Yeah. Go on.
So tell me, what is this big thing that you have to tell me that you're gonna rant about? Oh boy, Dan, take a deep breath.
You're gonna learn a little bit about the fighting game community today, and some of the reasons.
Oh god damn it!
And some of the reasons I'm particularly dour about it. I'm gonna try and stay on a singular thread here because talking about the community and history is just way too much. My history with it, in a very minuscule tournament presence and wanting to be invested at least passively for about 6 years, would already give us too big a time frame to cover on a whim. Trying to cover everything over a nearly 4-decade period, pure folly. Not going to try it. That's like a whole
folly.
That's like something like I sit down and write scripts for. I go back and I do research for. This is just current event stuff. I'm going to try and keep it all tethered to one event, which is what I'm really talking about, and kind of give a few details relating to how things have gotten there in a broad sense. But the main thing is that this year's EVO happened. Do you know or remember what EVO is?
It's like a big fighting game tournament, right?
Yes. The Evolution Championship Series, the premier fighting game tournament. What was the very top before they started making multiple EVOs? It still kind of is the very top, but now there's like EVO Japan, which makes sense, respect to Japan. But now there's one in Europe. I think there's a separate one in Europe and France. Maybe it's South America. I'm getting the two. There's one in France and then one somewhere else that just got announced. So we'll see what happens. The France one got announced, and there was one before that. Anyway, and it's getting bad. Not just the tournament, but also the community. Let me set the stage a little bit for you. Like I said, I don't want to go too nuts, but I got to give you some context because this is in your wheelhouse. It all started way back in the late 90s. It was a tournament called Battle by the Bay, and then in 2002 it rebranded to EVO. And it did its thing all the way through to the big boom in 2009. If you're not familiar, 2009 is when all of the games started to come back. Like we saw Street Fighter 4, we saw Mortal Kombat, we saw a bunch of re-releases. Eventually, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out. It was like fighting games were dormant for a while, and they were coming back in a big way, starting with 2009 and the years that followed. And it was also when streaming and content making for fighting games started getting really big. Fast forward more years, all the shit that happens in the background, there's some growth there. There's, like I said, I don't want to get into all of it because we would be here for fucking ever. Years pass, and we find ourselves in 2019, where EVO, the biggest premier tournament of the year, gets hit by a solid 1-2 punch. The first one, you could probably already guess given the year. 2019, what happened?
COVID.
Yes. This pushes the event to online only. And then the second punch comes. Guy at the top, one of the founders, the guy directing most of the thing. He was the most involved with like setting things up. Like the other founders were still involved, but he was like the face. He was putting everything together. His name is Joey. I could never pronounce his last name. I think it's Cellular. It doesn't matter. Everybody calls him Mr. Wizard. That's his handle. Oops. Turns out he's been abusing people and that he's into kids. So that whole debacle takes place. That takes the event off altogether. All the big names are pulling out, all the small names are pulling out, sponsors are pulling out, commentators are pulling out, everything pulls out. Just like that, EVO hits its lowest point. All the names in the scene, some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are scummy, all of them come out of the woodwork to talk about how EVO needs restructuring, and EVO isn't really the FGC. And they try to talk about how there's more beyond the biggest tournament of the year. There's community. And regardless of how I feel about the authenticity versus the opportunism in all those cases, the messaging is good. The community is more important than singular tournaments. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is how everyone just kind of moved on. Sure, you can move on from the singular event that happened when accountability comes and does its thing, but no one stopped to consider if other guys at the very top were getting away with this, or what's going on where there's less scrutiny, in the shadows, in the smaller regionals, or, other people that just happen to have clout. I'm going to skip over a lot of the intricacies that followed, but all you need to know is we land back at in-person events in 2022 under brand new ownership. You know who owns EVO now, Dan?
Who?
Sony. Sony swept in and they own EVO now. So now you can kind of see where this goes. The event, Dan, it's borderline unwatchable. There's constant ad breaks, watered down commentary, strict crowd rules, you name it. It's terrible. It's like it's sanitized, and it's getting worse and worse every year since then. It's really bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you can only contain that so much, but they are in the year over year. It gets more strict and structured. And at the same time, you have a community that's coming back to its main stage. It learned very little from its biggest scandals. It's under very heavy corporate overreach, and it still has an air of growth from 2009. They don't care about how or why. We need more people to watch. We need to keep growing and booming. And you can imagine the type of influx that heavy try to attract the modern and global audiences, the heavy corporate overreach, and all the nonsense that is just in the background, especially after 2015. You can imagine the kind of people that gets dragged in, right? It attracts the crazies, it attracts the degenerates, it attracts the nasty no-life types that are either hyperfixating on or want to control all these gaming spaces. Now, you know me. I don't mind eccentricities.
Take a deep breath.
But you know me.
Yes,
I don't mind eccentricities. I'm not a prude, and most importantly, I like to treat people in the traditional way where I give you a shot when I meet you. The golden rule. A lot of people tend to forget that because there's a lot of nasty people out there willing to take advantage of the golden rule, but I try to approach that not in a dumb take advantage of me way, but I like people. I want to give you a shot. If you're a little loose with the language, as long as you aren't hamming it up or being harmful, and you know when to rein it in, you're fine by me. If you're a woman that likes to dress in a, let's say, flaunting manner, you won't get any shade or harassment from me. If you're a guy and you like to cross-dress, I say go for it, do your thing, just, don't harass anybody. In the traditional sense of being nice to people and judging their character and their place in the scene, I'll stand by these people and in the most common sense way. Let's get along where possible, as long as you aren't a terrible person and as long as you aren't a direct danger or detriment to me, my people, in the scene.
Fair.
But it's the same shit we talk about with every other community and avenue where all these people can gather together. It's the times we live in. These people have no character. Some are selfish. Some don't actually care. Some will just fall in line with whatever's currently acceptable, praying that they get overlooked. And some are just flat out evil, Dan. And this has been a problem for as early as, like I mentioned 2015, but it's really like at no point in time were the breaks ever stopped. Like, they never stopped to consider, like, hey, maybe we should, like, you know, like, it's almost like, and you're gonna react in a certain way, but it's almost like immigration in a way, right? where, you know, if people want to enter your communities with the greatest intentions, they want to want to be part of a great experience, you let them in and they respect you, you respect them, and everybody grows. That's not what's happening with this. And just, it's reaching a tipping point with just like doing this year over year. You kind of got away with it back in 2009 to 2014 when things were a little bit better, even though mindless masses don't do much for you. But when things started changing culturally in 2015 on, and you never really pumped the brakes, things only got worse. It got to the point where you have someone who's considered by the FGC to be one of the top players trying to do public fetish shit, and only stopped when he got moderate pushback where none was expected. And that kicked off a month-long discussion, Dan, I kid you not, about pet play and quote-unquote puppy girls in the FGC, and how it's harmless and not a problem and you should just let it happen, even though you have younger people in the community also on these social media platforms and in these affected areas coming out and saying it was making them uncomfortable. And what I'm getting at, why I brought this up, while I gave you this whole preamble and tried to set the stage for you, and why we're here talking about it and scrutinizing these things instead of just me sitting there talking about, hey, did you hear about what got announced at the thing? Shortly after the tournament wraps, somebody casually reveals that there are frequent orgies at these fighting game events, and that domino fell right after the biggest tournament of the year kicked off multiple people coming forward with reports of varying levels of sexual deviancy and abuse that's been going on for months and months and years, and it's just blowing up. And there are so many threads on Twitter, in Reddit, tucked away in different smaller communities. There's constantly Google Docs dropping, all these different areas. And obviously some of it's going to be two guys had sex and one of them didn't like it, so afterwards we got to make it a big deal, which we've been dealing with for like a decade, stories like that. But not all of them are like that, and some of them are connected to big names that have very suspicious loss records with other players. So not only are we talking about people getting taken advantage of, people being abused, but now we're also talking about the integrity of the game, where people are win trading for sexual favors. And I want to believe
honestly,
that
I feel like you can't make this shit up. Like,
you
this
can't.
is insane.
This is the result. I don't want to say the full thing, because like back in 2009 there was an earnest, like, this is our moment, let's grow, that just never, that like they never eased up on it. It was earnest at first, but I'll get more to my thoughts on that in a bit. It after like doing this for 9 years, after the cultural shit in 2015 really started to turn, like it was bound to reach a tipping point. I don't think it's done. I think, but I digress. I'll get to that. I want to believe that all of this is just a minority of people making shit worse for everybody else. Throughout the years, there's been drama, there's been issues. It's unavoidable in a global push for a community, right? Mm-hmm. But what I can't stand and what I can't like let pass is, like I told you, there's been no attempts to pump the brakes on this. It's just they need the growth, they need all that stuff. The people at the top let this happen. Despite all the nonsense and whatever intentions they had, they said growth at any cost, growth no matter what, and they never pumped the brakes at any point, regardless of what they were seeing or what they were hearing. All the top players are either riding on it because they need the viewership, they need the numbers, they need the people with no outside life to live and breathe fighting games in the community, because they all got a taste for it back in 2009 and jumped in when the genre started booming. And they saw opportunity, they saw connections, they saw clout, they saw money. They saw an approaching audience, and they either didn't care or didn't know and didn't look. And it's crazy to me because, and this has been an issue forever, both with legitimate concerns and weeding out just like the bad people. Anytime you point this out, and some of this is going to sound familiar, they say, oh, it's you never cared, or you never belonged, or that you were never truly there to see this, or, and this one is the most popular, it was never for you and you're an awful person. So that's the attitude when it comes to all these accusations. But with the fighting game community, you have the added asininity of people saying, well, actually, I know we're talking about sexual abuse. Could you post your hours in the fighting game that we were talking about? How about you play me in a 1st to 10? It's like, this isn't like beef. People are getting hurt. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with these people. And the top players, when all this shit started coming out, you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing people say touch grass. What? It's like people are using these events. Like some people, and this is also part of the problem, some people use the fighting game community and these events. This is like they're going out, they're trying to meet new people, and some of that leads to some really dark shit, but other things, it's nice. Like back in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2013, 14, even in the 15 and 16, there was more opportunity for that growth, for the actual community that we all want. But what I'm getting at is the literal only time these people were willing to slow everything down and acknowledge and assess the situation is when one of the oldest guys around, one of the founders of the biggest tournaments ever, one of the last bits of legacy in the EVO leadership, committed one of the most heinous crimes possible during a time when the competition was hampered by an unprecedented pandemic, and they still walked away with it. Like basically just saying, oh, it's one and done. We got to come together as a community, and we got to do this. It's like they're halfway there. Come together as a community, but you don't fix the problems. You just keep talking because you just keep talking about how we're bigger than this. We're the fighting game community. We're bigger than any one tournament, and that sounds so great. But you're just doing it so people keep watching and keep playing. You're doing it not for altruistic reasons. You're doing it so that you can continue to line your pockets and continue to have these connections. And I need to stress this to anyone who's willing to listen to this. The fighting game community, as it is right now, is not a safe place for vulnerable types that end up attracted to these interests and hobbies. Be it, the nerds, the geeks, the autists, all those people. Maybe you have a nice local community, entirely possible, but the further you get up the chain, as you go into regionals, as you go to bigger tournaments, the worse it gets. And it gets there because there's a buffer in the middle of top players saying everything's great and we're all one community. There's normal people that just go there to play the fighting games. They tune everything out and then they get the fuck out of there. And there's a group of people that just eat whatever's in front of them. And it's doing cover, just like everything else in the world, for predators, bad people, abusers, all this shit. The fighting game community needs to actually fucking do something about this, or it's just like I don't know how it gets worse than this, but it will get worse than this. So they need to get in line and start fixing the problems. Stop pretending, it's just like, oh, it's one off, the one guy got caught, so everything's good now, and you fucking sweep it under the rug for, however many years. You actually need to go in, root these people out, stop protecting people because you knew them, or they're one of your friends, or they're a big guy that used to carry the scene, or they're a protected identity or whatever. These people need to go. And there's only so many times they can cut the shit. They did it once with Smash Brothers, right? They said, oh, well, it's not a fighting game community problem. There's no abuser problem here. It's all the Smash community. And then they kind of tried to separate that as much as possible. And now the Smash guys are doing their own thing and they're splintering. And now they're trying to foot the bill with Guilty Gear. It's not a fighting game problem. It's a Guilty Gear problem. And to be completely fair, it kind of is a Guilty Gear problem because most of the deviants are playing Guilty Gear and having these orgies and abusing these people. Like, there's some really sketchy shit at the top with some of the players, which is a whole other fucking conversation. But in actuality, the full fact is it's in the entire community. It bubbles over in some places like Smash and Guilty Gear, just the way it is, but now they're off doing their own things. Smash is starting to splinter in its own groups, and Guilty Gear is going to be dealing with this for fucking forever. But the fighting game community at large has problems, and we can't wait for the culture to just shift and say well, it's okay to call these things out now, we're gonna fix it now. And you can't just keep saying, well, it's just this game, I'll go to this game, or now it's that game. You're gonna be left with just Tekken and Street Fighter, and eventually they're gonna get into that too if they're not already there taking over everything. This needs to be fixed. And I just, everybody from top to bottom is either ignoring it, enabling it, or doesn't have the power to do anything about it. And it's just, for one of the largest communities, it's only that in name only. It's dangerous. Vulnerable people shouldn't go near it. If you have a nice local, stick with it or whatever, but That, my friend, is how you end up with EVO 2024 and the modern fighting game community, featuring bloated, ad-ridden, barely watchable events and rampant sexual deviance and abuse. You know?
Oh my God.
And listen, it gets me heated. I won't pretend to be the best at these games. It's literally impossible because I try hard to find new ones and play a lot of them. I already told you earlier that I'm going to be playing a shit ton with Harrison coming up. But I do love the genre and the type of community it can have. And at the end of the day, I can always sequester myself and just play games with Harrison and like the one or two other people I know that play fighting games and have this little never-ending session where I can just play 3 hours a day and be done with it. But it would be really nice. You know, I've got 10, 15, maybe even 20 years of an age where I can still compete, and I would love nothing more than to get rid of all these terrible people, get rid of the effect they had on the scene. That's like a long-term thing. Like, it's something I've considered. Like, I'm at step 1. I would need to be at step 15. I've got, like, I don't want to get to, because this is about news and shit like this, I don't want to go too far behind the scenes. I have big plans for fighting game content as part of BOON, both on YouTube and in other outlets, but that's just like, it can't, even if I were like to win the lottery tomorrow and had all this power to just make my own tournament scene and, you know, learn the intricacies of how these people get away with it and, you know, make it, you know, and watched it like a hawk, it's not a one-man job. And it doesn't have to be.
Oh, well,
there's plenty of people out there with good intentions. There's normal everyday people that don't like the shit that goes on. And aside from some of the more cultural stuff that's like iffy and you can't really talk about, nobody likes sexual abuse. Come on, let's you know. And nobody likes, you know, having to watch, you know, these ad-ridden tournaments, you know, and shit like that. Like there can be something better for the tournament as a whole. Like I even hear top players complaining about EVO, like not just like the abuse shit, but like, you know, just like, it doesn't feel like the way it used to, and that's just the natural growth of things. But there's ways and gaps out there that you can still have grassroots and you can still have earnest competition, but it can't, even if I rose to the challenge tomorrow and dedicated like years of my life to it, it's not a one-man job. It can't be, you know. But to answer your question, like there's stuff coming down the line, but at the end of the day, I would love nothing more than to see, you know, the bad actors out, the damage they've done to the games, the industry, the community gone. I know it's not an overnight thing, but it's feasible. In this first world problem where we're talking about game communities and furthering, not even like, we talk about games as art and that's kind of like a big deal, but I'm talking about extracurriculars with fighting game communities, which I am passionate about. I wish I'd put more time into it than just like the few tournaments I went to in the past. I was invested for a long time. I want to see it better, but it's like every time I talk about it nowadays, I just say like, let it burn. Like what am I going to do? You may as well, if you're not going to like do the right thing, just crash. And I'll be there to pick up the pieces, I guess, in whatever way I can, you know? But, yeah, it's, you know, we talk a lot about the industry and the games being made, but the communities, man, they're, like, there's something else. Not just the fighting game community, all these communities, but the fighting game community is one I hate to admit I do care about to a degree, even if I'm fine watching all this shit happen.
Well, so. I mean, I know you care about it, and it's like, is something that you love is being fucking burned to the ground. It's not fun. I get it.
Yeah. Even when I didn't actively compete, I would love what I would get people over and we'd play while the tournaments were starting up, and we would do full 3-day events where like I would have people over and we'd watch it like, you know, a sporting event. You know, we'd be playing, we'd be chatting, we'd be watching. We'd make it a whole thing, and it's like, you know. It got to that point where even if I didn't place, even if I didn't play at all of them, I would be going to these tournaments, and I see why people want that, even though there's a lot of fucking, when you deal with people in general, there's always knuckleheads out there, there's always people you don't want to deal with, but it can be nice, but it's like, I don't like where it's at. I haven't liked where it's at for a while, and like this shit, it's like when stuff like this happens, when all this crazy stuff happens, and I'm not talking about what people do behind closed doors, I'm talking about things that hurt the community and the reputation and things that bleed upward to the game and events. Like, we can't do that anymore. And the honestly, the biggest thing for me is how some of the top players are reacting, which is, it's literally like them going like, touch grass, get a life. It's like, So are we a community or are we not? Like, you can't, like, I know that people have unhealthy attachments to certain things. Like, you need to be more than just the community you support. You are a person. You have multiple facets of yourself. But you, like, going to Twitter or Facebook or whatever the fuck they use and saying touch grass. Like, people are getting molested at these events, and it's like happening in a lot of fashions. People are being preyed upon. They're being groomed. They're being, they're trading wins for sexual favors. People are being,
That's crazy.
It's nuts to me, and it's crazy because I could show you pictures. Like, I'm not going to talk about it here because then it's like you draw unnecessary heat. But like some of the fucking, it's crazy. Like, I read like some transcripts of some of the things being said, and I saw the pictures of the people involved. It's nuts. It's fucking nuts. The crazy shit that goes on there. But it's nuts, and I make levity about it, but a lot of it is just it's sad in a lot of ways, and we can't, the fighting game community can't keep like sweeping it away and saying, oh well, we've moved past it, or hey, you should move past it, or oh, if you care too much. It's just it's disappointing all around.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one thing to take a beating with like the games themselves, but don't get attached to communities. It kind of, that's all I got. I got my little long-winded rant. I'm sweating.
You're sweating.
It's hot. It's hot in here. I have a blanket on my leg to like dampen the noise from this fucking computer, and I have turned my AC off. So that plus shouting and drinking coffee, I'm fucking dying in here. But hey, anyone listening, go play fighting games. They're fucking fun. Even some of the new ones, even though some of the new ones are kind of shitty, there's a full back catalog of great fighting games to play. And even though the community's shit, I have a feeling it won't be shit forever. And you should just enjoy the games anyway. Find yourself a Harrison, like my buddy Harrison, and just do 1v1s with your friend forever.
Find yourself a Harrison, like my buddy Harrison.
Shoutouts to Harrison for putting up with all my fighting game shenanigans. And tune in to Fighting Fridays, coming back to a regular schedule by the end of August.
Hey, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, lots of fun. You're in a few of those Fighting Fridays, and some of the early ones.
Am I? Get my ass beat.
Well, it's mainly like we did a series. It was called Training Room. In the future, it's just going to be in parentheses training in X game instead of making a sub series because that gets confusing. But yeah, it was you and Eric and me just watching you and Eric try and get better. It was a lot of fun. You guys are having fun. It's neat. But, fighting games are fun. The community kind of sucks right now. That's the takeaway.
Gotcha.
And I only say that because I care, not because I'm a gossipy bitch.
No, I know. You definitely care. Well, on that note, I think it's a good place to wrap this baby up because I am very tired, and that was quite the rant.
Right.
Well, that was episode 16. Hope you enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, we will see everybody next time.
We'll see everybody next time.
We're retarded.
Less ranting. With less ranting. Hopefully, I can't imagine something's gonna rock my world quite like that did for a hot
you can't.
second.
No promises.
I got to be like I've hit all of them in the first like 15. Like I've hit localization, I've hit censorship, I've hit the fighting game community. What else could possibly come around the corner and sucker punch me?
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, very true.
I'll kill you.
Bye.
Bye.